This week's podcast is sponsored by Whitney Antiques, an antique shop in the heart of Oxfordshire, specialising in historic needlework. If you'd like to know more about Whitney Antiques, check out their website at www.whitneyantiques.com. Hello and welcome back to Unearth the Past, a podcast that delves into your family history with me, Dr. Michaela Hume. So I hope you've had a lovely Christmas and a fabulous New Year. I wish I could tell you I did something amazing for New Year. Actually didn't, I'm not going to lie. I was in bed for 10:30. I think I'm showing my age. So who got a DNA test for Christmas then? If you did, let me know. You can drop me a message. You can do so via my website, which is www.michaelahume.com. So on today's episode, I'm delighted to be joined by the wonderful Vinny Shoreman. Vinny is a globally recognised mind coach. His client list includes some of the highest achievers in sport, business and professional life. From astronauts to world-renowned fighters, Vinny offers support, guidance and mentorship to help them achieve their goals and aspirations. Vinny also has vast, unrivalled experience over decades at the highest levels of combat sports. Early in his career, he cut his teeth as a world-class coach in Thai boxing, guiding fighters to British, European and world honours. He later supplemented this by becoming one of the most sought-after commentators, sharing his knowledge and experience across all major promotions within the sport. Vinny Shoreman, welcome to the podcast. Vinny Shoreman, thank you so much for coming on my podcast today.
Thanks very much. No, it's going to be interesting for me because, I was not interested in what's gone on before you, So
now, before we sort of delve into the past, how did we get here? So how did you end up becoming a mind coach and a commentator?
I've been involved in Thai boxing since I was 15 years of age. I got into it because I wanted to jump in the air and kick things, people, generally be like a heroic Jackie Chan type of stuff. I was brought up on martial arts, basically. And
can I just was that pretty unusual? Because I imagine a lot of lads in that time probably would have played football. So what was it about martial arts that...
I was rubbish at football.
Were you just rubbish?
Awful.
Yeah.
I remember there was a story where I lived in Longsight in Manchester, and remember there was a squad, like a squad of, the rubbish kids, got to be in the team, in the squad. And I remember this one particular time where I was going to play in a school match, and Peter Chan, I'll never forget him, got picked instead of me and scored. Yeah, because I didn't have garters for my socks, and my socks used to fall down. And the teacher, anyway, I don't know why I went on to that. But yeah, so basically I was rubbish at football, so never into sports, anything like that. And then I just enjoyed boxing. I liked boxing from a young age for some reason. Wasn't violent or violent-minded. And then just got into Thai boxing, and the progression from being not really a fighter, being more good at talking about it, became a commentary. So here I am.
And today we're going to have a look into your family tree.
Yeah.
What do you know about your family tree?
I know that my granddad was boxed in the army, I think. I know that he might have turned professional. My dad used to dabble in boxing, mainly boxing my mum, really, because he wasn't a very pleasant man. My mum's dad was in the army. He was Welsh, I believe, in Mould. Not much. I come from a turbulent life, to be honest. It was a lot of alcohol, a lot of abuse, violent abuse towards my mum. My mum's mum was violent towards her and her sisters. Not too sure about what she did with her brothers, but they weren't. It was turbulent, to say the least.
I know a lot of people come to you for advice and for guidance.
Yeah.
And you've helped me out. That's how I know that.
More than a pleasure.
Yeah. So I was struggling a bit driving on motorways. I have anxiety, and I came to see you, and you very kindly helped me. But thinking about your upbringing, where have you gone to get guidance or help? Like when you were growing up, who was that person that was there for you?
I don't know, if I'm truthfully honest. Probably no one, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
Not really. My mum was always, don't be so soft, don't be so stupid, get on with it. That was the narrative of post-war children, wasn't it? They was all the same. Generational trauma, as they call it. So not really anyone. Just people that I ended up being friends with. But there's been many people around me, but as an adult, as a guidance from people, not many. Maybe Thai boxing coach, Master Sken, who trained us, who's from Thailand, and he had very good values and instilled discipline, what I didn't have. My mum was a very loving person, but advice, mum, everything was don't be soft, don't be so stupid, get on with it, don't be so mad. There was never, it was always very black and white instead of grey. But yeah, not really anyone, to be honest.
Well, we're going to start looking into your family tree, and we're going to start with the Shoreman line. So I know you've already mentioned that you were not a person that was involved in sports much growing up. Well, I can tell you that the sport gene is very strong in the Shoreman line.
Really?
Very strong. So your granddad was a boxer, and I've got a couple of little newspaper articles.
Oh, no way.
That I'm going to show you. So your granddad, who was William Alfred Shoreman, and he was born in 1887. Okay, so this is from 1909. And this is reference, you'll see a reference to a W. Shoreman. That's your granddad.
In Longsight as well.
So if you can read it out for me, Vin.
There were some spirited bouts last night at the City Atlantic Club. S. Gates, Longsight, beat W. Shoreman of Manchester by knocking them out in the first round. Yeah, that goes my winning record. Is the only one where he won? Started off in a cheery mode instead of him getting chinned.
So this was a bit later. So the one you saw before was in November. This is what's happening in December, and he's just on the bottom line. According to local newspapers, Vinny's granddad William, who was representing Collyhurst in Manchester, had 2 fights, losing his first by knockout and winning his second against a J. Stopford of Gorton in the 4th round. By the time William was boxing, the sport had become more professionalised, with boxers following the Queensberry rules. This meant that the days of boxing matches descending into wrestling brawls were no longer allowed, and instead each fight consisted of 3-minute rounds. The fighters had to wear gloves, and there was a 10-second count after every knockdown.
Yeah, my mum was from Collyhurst. Collyhurst and Newton Heath, I believe. But yeah, I mean, what springs to mind in my head is if you got stopped in a fight and then fighting a month later after being stopped. I mean, that's unheard of now. So obviously, the time's different. At
this time, at the beginning of the 20th century, this is when a lot of the boxing clubs are emerging, because Manchester, in the 19th century, the end of the 19th century, has a real problem with youth gangs and crime. So at the beginning of the 20th century, we see a lot of things like the Scouts being formed and boxing clubs being formed in Manchester to sort of channel, I think, the lads' energy. It would get channeled somewhere else eventually, because obviously in 1914, World War I happens, and then all these young lads then go off to fight. Vinny's granddad William was not the only sportsman in the family. His dad played cricket, and his uncle Fred was a distance runner for the North Manchester Harriers. He was captain of the team, and he won the 10-mile club championship a remarkable 7 times in 10 years, coming second only once. By 1905, Fred had left Manchester and moved to New Mills, where he would go on to become the secretary of the New Mills and Newton Cricket and Athletic Club, and also an athletics judge.
That's mad, that. Obviously, I'm not going to know because I don't do your job, but that's crazy, man. That's really crazy.
So they were all...
You didn't pass me that on. You didn't pass me that on. I can't drive 10 miles in that anyway, you know what I mean? But that's mad, that. In
The reason I know that was because I did a newspaper search of the name Shoreman in Manchester, and there was a couple of hundred Shoremans in Manchester. And what was interesting for me as a historian and genealogist was that they didn't do anything wrong. So normally when I do a newspaper search, Vinny, and people come up, it's normally because they're criminals or they've done a crime or they've done something bad. No, when I looked into the Shoremans, they didn't do anything wrong. They were just coming up time and time again for sport.
Oh, why?
For cricket, for football, for running. They would just seem to be a real sort of sporty family. So when you said, I'm not very good at sport, I thought, well, clearly that's not in your DNA. Because if we go back, you've got quite a few sportsmen in your genes.
There's, I don't know whether it's lack of encouragement that I weren't good at sport. I think it was more of a belief system. It was lack of confidence for me, because I never really had anyone to aspire to. I never had anybody to around me that supported me in a way that a dad would support the son. You know, with having a stepdad who I hated, and it was a mutual feeling, to be honest. And I'm not going to change it because he's dead. And you go, oh, you shouldn't speak ill of the dad. He was lovely. He weren't. I didn't like him. I'm not going to change that. However, I mean, I have a compulsion to train, and I don't know what it is. It's like I have to train. It's just in me. So I guess maybe that's.
Do you think that's a discipline thing? Because I think it's funny that you've obviously gone into boxing.
Yeah.
I know you have a boxing brain, right? Yeah. So I know that you study fights and you know boxing in and out, and yet, like we said, your dad boxed and your granddad boxed. So do you think maybe somehow that's how you ended up boxing?
It's strange, because I remember watching boxing. I was about 13. I started boxing when I was 13, because I lived in Knutsford. There was no boxing club, so we went to Sale West, where Ricky Hatton was from. And I remember watching fights, and I just knew what was going to happen. And it's almost like, that's going to happen, this is going to happen. And with fights and watching them, especially being a commentator, and obviously because of experience, you say, is this kid's going to get caught? You just have an eye for it. I don't know what it is. I don't know why. You don't know how. I just seem to have an understanding for it, which, I'm obsessed with it. It's funny, I was saying on the way here when I was watching Russian boxing, and maybe it can not be in your DNA. It's crazy.
So the first record that I've actually found your dad on was the 1939 register, and that was taken just prior to World War II. And your dad is on that record, and at the time they're living at 116 Smedley Road. Now, also in the house, just before the war, we have got his dad, William. We've got his mum, Emma. And we've also got your dad's brother, a guy called Fred.
Yeah, Fred. New Uncle Fred, yeah.
Missing from the house at the time was Vinny's dad's other brother, William. However, I did manage to find a newspaper article relating to an incident that had been written some years later. William was driving his truck when he tried to overtake another lorry. While doing the manoeuvre, he saw a dog, which he swerved to miss and then hit a lamppost. He was lucky to survive the mangled wreck. Does that sound like a Shoreman?
100%. That's what I would. Would you be doing that? Listen, you know what I'm like with dogs.
Yeah, I'd have done the same.
100%. I can imagine that's what you do.
William's birth certificate reveals that he was born on the 28th of June 1920. He was 8 years older than Vinny's dad. The record also shows that Vinny's granddad, William, was a private in the West Riding Regiment during World War I. Vinny's granddad was born in 1887, and the first record that I can find him on is the 1891 census. And I've actually got him on the first census record. So the census is obviously taken every 10 years. So the first census we can find him on is the 1891 English census. And the whole family are living on Abel Street, and they're living at 50 Abel Street, which is in Manchester in Harper Hay. Not far from the Dog's Home, if you know the Dog's Home. So I don't know if you can make them out. They're just at the top there, Vin.
William, Margaret, William again, and Benjamin. My son's called Benjamin.
So all three lads enter World War One.
Right.
And they all survive.
Okay.
I think it's probably fair to say that Ben had the most action during World War One.
Right.
And we know that because we do have his war records. Unfortunately, we've not got them for your granddad. I've got a couple of records, so I know what battalions are in. And also for your granddad's other brother, we haven't got them for him either, but we do have them for Ben.
Benjamin Shoreman B. Private, Manchester Regiment, volunteering in January 1915, proceeded overseas 4 months later.
Benjamin Shoreman signed up to join the war effort in January of 1915. He was posted to the 2nd Battalion of the Manchester Regiment, and 4 months after signing up, he was on a boat heading to France and Flanders. Ben was involved in some of the most important and bloodiest battles during World War I, including the Battle of Loos and the Somme. During November of 1916, while on the front line, he was injured and sent back to Britain to recover. Following 3 months in a military hospital, he was posted to the Scottish Rifles, where he would play his part in the battles of Ypres, Bullecourt and Cambrai. He was eventually demobilised in February of 1919. I'm sure you can count how many battles he was involved in.
Crazy.
And some of the biggest battles, I suppose, that were in World War One. That, you know, when you think of World War One, and he was at them all. So he survives the war. Now we know from his records, comes out of the war in 1919. He's ill, and we know that because his brother is actually writing to try and get his regiment number.
Right.
Now I'm presuming that is because it might be to do with like a pension or some sort of insurance payout.
Yeah.
But we know that he's ill. In 1927, he succumbs to TB.
Okay.
And his brother and his widow are trying everything they can to try and get this regiment number.
His brother being what, Charles or?
Charles, yeah, because what happens is when he gets injured in the Somme, he's in the Manchester Regiment, but when he actually goes back in again, he's in a different regiment, and it's the 2nd regiment number that they're desperately trying to get hold of before he dies. And he's in a sanatorium, which is normally for people who are recovering or struggling with TB.
Right. Do you know why he's called Ben? Because sounds really... I've never told anybody... No one knows this at all. But on my foot, he's like, oh, you know, you got veins on the bottom of your foot, and it's spelt Ben. And I don't know why,
right?
But I just wanted to call him Ben. I called my son Ben. That's why. It's literally why.
That is the best reason I've ever
I just
heard.
Seen it and went Ben and then that's the reason why it was called Ben.
Right. I love that, Vinny.
Spooky, that, isn't it?
Yeah. So your grandmother was called Emma, and I've actually got their marriage certificate if you want to see it.
Yep. So Emma was my dad's mum.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you look next to her name, you'll notice.
Widow.
So when he marries her, she's actually a widow.
Really?
Emma Smith married Vinny's granddad, William Albert Shoreman, on the 25th of October 1919 at the Albert Memorial Church in Collyhurst. This was not her first wedding at this church. Some 7 years earlier, she'd married a labourer named Albert Johnson. The couple went on to have 2 children, Samuel and Albert Jr. When war broke out in 1914, Albert signed up to join the Manchester Regiment. While serving with the Manchesters, he was killed in action on the 5th of January 1918. The marriage certificate for Vinny's grandparents, Emma Smith and William Albert Shoreman, reveals that William's dad, Vinny's great-granddad, was also called William Albert and was a labourer. William Albert Sr. had a few jobs during his lifetime. He was a cart driver, a builder, and also worked on the floor of a publishing house.
Well, I heard somewhere, because I talked to my brother this morning because he knew he was coming on, and he said he was a rag and bone man.
Quite possibly.
So that cart
driver. Yeah. Quite possibly. A rag and bone man. But it seems to say... yeah. It seems he had quite itchy feet. So he did quite a few different professions during his lifetime.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Can you?
Yeah.
Why can you relate?
I've done all sorts. I've been a labourer, I've been a chef, I've worked, you know, loads of different stuff. I've had loads of different jobs. I've never really settled until I started doing hypnotherapy and being a mind coach and that. And these are the 2 things. But I did all sorts, yeah. Always have.
And is that just the fact of you've always worked hard? Because when I look into your family tree, you are from working class, you know, grafters, people that worked hard the whole lives to put food on the table, to care for the kids. All the kids seem to do all right for themselves.
I've got a penchant for hard work, I think. I believe that you should work and you keep yourself in shape and healthy because your kids don't ask to come into the world. I think you sign an unwritten agreement with life, I believe, with God or whatever, to be able to be around for your kids as long as you can, as long as you possibly can. I think it's a duty as a parent to keep yourself healthy, not just provide from which you do, but it's just to keep yourself healthy. I think that's extremely important to me.
Well, I researched your family tree, the Shoreman line, and I went back to 1766, and I can honestly tell you that if we cut you, the medlock will just flow out of you. You are Manchester on the Shoreman line, through and through, right back to the
wrong with that.
To the 18th century.
Right.
Did you think that? Did you think?
Yeah, I've spoke to you briefly before about it.
Yeah.
Everything that they've ever been mentioned, the Shoremans have always been echoes back to Manchester. So, yeah, I can understand that.
Are you proud of your Manchester root?
100%. I remember being at school. It's weird how these things sort of throw up things for you. I remember being at school and being fascinated by the Industrial Revolution. Because I think the first computer was Manchester, wasn't it? And the River Irwell and stuff like that. And I had this odd fascination for it as a kid. And when we was learning, I think that was in Longsight, so I was only about 9. And I remember being fascinated by Manchester. So yeah, it'll always be home, regardless of I've lived in Liverpool, etc. And I'm happy where I am. But Manchester will always be
home for you.
Yeah, 100%.
Now I'm going to flick over to your mum's side, if that's okay. So tell me a bit about your mum then, Vin.
My mum was a extremely hard-working lady. Obviously, the receiver of numerous beatings off my dad.
That must have been tough for you then, was it, growing up?
It kind of not. It wasn't because he was on Stelazine. My dad was a registered psychopath.
Wow.
I remember reading it somewhere, it's divorce papers or something. But my dad was an extremely violent human being, and my mum suffered at the hands of him. But she worked. She worked 2 jobs, worked diligently. She was a nurse for a short period of time, I believe, and she took no nonsense. But she was very. She had a very empathetic nature, my mum as well. So I think I get that from her.
I was going to say, where did you get that from?
I think I get it from her. I don't know. I think my mum had, because my mum had a stillborn son before me called Michael, and he died. Obviously stillborn, but he died before me. And then when she had me, I think the anxiety of, because I had childhood asthma, I think the anxiety of what she suffered, the post-traumatic stress disorder that she had with her son, I think she projected that onto me because he was very sort of worried about me being obviously dying or whatever. So I believe that anxious thing was put on me rather than what I would get naturally, if that makes sense.
So growing up then, so there was you and your siblings.
Yeah.
So I know obviously you've spoken about the relationship between your mum and your dad.
Yeah.
But were you and your siblings close?
Yeah, we are. We are not as close as they are with each other because there's a considerable gap.
Right, okay.
It's 8 years between us, me and my sister Marie. But yeah, I loved them dearly. But they grew up more together because I lived in Longsight. Then my sister left because she was like 18 or whatever. Yeah. So I was more on my own. But yeah, I loved them dearly, and it was they've all got wonderful sense of humour. So my family are very quick-witted. I've
been told that your brother Paul was the funniest person.
Yeah, 100%
on the planet.
He was our Paul was the funniest. He suffered. He had a really, really bad health span. That was. It was unfair. It was one of those things that you think, how can be bestowed with such cruelty, really, in health wise? And I still miss him. I still echo. Some of the things he said still echo with me, and he always will. And I've taken far too soon, if I'm honest. And but yeah, he was funny, really funny. He's very, very smart, and just dry, quick-witted. And if, like you said in the beginning, though, if there was anyone that influenced me, our kid believed in me. I remember our Paul, even from a young age, always believed in me, sort of thing. And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget him for that. So, if it was anyone, yeah, it would be. And Alan, my brother, as well. They all had played the part, but as a role model, as like a father figure or whatever, no, didn't have that.
So should we have a look at your mum's side?
Yes, please.
Now, I know you thought that your mum's mum was Irish.
Yes.
But she wasn't Irish.
Really?
No, she wasn't Irish. Vinny's mum's parents were George Roberts and Marion Hallwood. George Roberts was born in 1894 in Oswestry, Shropshire. He spent the whole of his working life as a miner, and it's likely that this is what brought him to Manchester. The 1921 census reveals that he was working at the Bradford Colliery, which used to stand where Man City's ground is today. George's dad was called Evan Roberts, and he was born in Wales, and his mother Emily Jones was born in Staffordshire. Now, because I wasn't able to find a birth certificate or marriage certificate for Evan Roberts, I was not able to go back any further on the Roberts line. So do those names ring a bell? Do Florence and George ring a bell?
Yeah, I know his name was George Roberts, and I know her name was Florence, but I didn't know it was Hallwood.
Florence was born in 1899 in Manchester. She marries George on the 4th of August 1919, so just after the war. Her dad is called Daniel, and her mum is Mary Wynne. Daniel Hallwood was born in 1869 in Manchester. He was employed as a slate labourer, and before that he worked as a dyer. Daniel and his wife Mary Wynne had 11 children, with 4 sadly dying before they reached adulthood. The 1891 census shows the couple not long after their marriage living in a back-to-back on Coate Street in Ancoats. By this time, back-to-backs could no longer be built in Manchester. They were outlawed in the mid-19th century because they were deemed to be a threat to human health due to a lack of adequate ventilation, therefore leading to the spread of disease. Daniel Hallwood's parents, Frederick Hill Hallwood and Letitia Meredith, moved to Manchester from Liverpool sometime in the early 1860s. Frederick marries his wife, Letitia Meredith, in Liverpool, and I've got a copy of their marriage, if you'd like to see it, their marriage certificate. Frederick Hallwood married Letitia Meredith on the 25th of June 1854 at the parish church in Liverpool. At the time of their marriage, Frederick and Letitia were both living on Gower Street. Frederick was employed as a woodcarver, and his dad James was a watchmaker.
So Scouser as well. Yeah. I lived in Liverpool for years and I loved it. I mean, I
was going to say, have you got a connection to Scouser?
No, but I loved it because I don't even know. Look, I've got nothing against anywhere where any area of anywhere, to be honest. But I don't know. I really liked it. I still go training there now. I drive 45 minutes there, train, and 45 minutes back. But there's just something about it that it seems to. It's weird, isn't it? It's weird.
It is weird. I think when you start to sort of look into it and you start to see weird parallels, don't you, with the life you sort of living now?
Yeah.
So Letitia's dad, he was a candle maker, and obviously Frederick's dad is a watchmaker. So quite crafty skills, aren't they?
Yeah, skilled stuff. Yeah.
Are you good at anything like that?
No.
So you're not good at DIY, Vinny?
No, I'm the worst ever.
Really?
Oh God, no! Don't ever let me do anything. I'll just ruin it. It's just I'm not that way inclined, really. That I've not got that man sort of screwdrivery. Nah.
No. So that gene didn't pass down.
That gene's gone.
No.
Yeah, unfortunately. But I don't think there's much call for what's it candle makers anymore, is there? So we got out of that one pretty easy.
Now, Letitia, she was born in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
So that side is definitely Irish. You've definitely got a strong Irish gene running through on both sides of your tree. A lot of your ancestors have moved for work and have left a place that they would call home and moved somewhere totally different.
I've never had a problem with it. When I was younger, I was like, you obviously have your trepidations and worry about it, making friends and stuff like that, which I haven't had a problem with. But yeah, I've never really had a problem living anywhere. I've lived in all sorts of places and when I go anywhere and visit anywhere, I never feel out of place anywhere, if I'm honest.
Would you say you're proud, Vin, of your working class roots?
Yeah, of course I am. Yeah, of course I am. I had a problem with it when I was younger because I lived going from Longsight to Knutsford is like night and day, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's like shopping at Aldi and then going to Harrods, isn't it? You know what I mean? So for me, I had a problem with that. But I mean, as working class now, I'm proud of what we did, what we've done, and proud of where we are and what. But I thought that the other day because I live in a nice house in Holmes Chapel now, and it's a lovely place and great people. I love it. But I know I never thought I would get there. I always thought I was. I don't know. I always believed that I was aiming low, but I've got to a higher standard, and long may it continue. I'll continue to work hard to get where I have to get to.
I'm going to show you some pictures of some of the houses that your ancestors are living in, and then we shall wrap it up. So this is Red Bank, and this is an area of Manchester which is just near Strangeways. And on the Shoreman line in the 1880s, your ancestors were living in Red Bank.
No way.
And that's the street they lived on.
It looks like where Open All Hours is set, doesn't it?
How would you describe that?
It's like a hovel, if I'm honest. It's quite unusual though, isn't it? It's like the structure here and etc. But yeah, it looks it's rough, isn't it?
Do you want to show you some more?
Yeah, go on.
Now, you might think that this isn't progress, but if you look outside, you'll probably spot what these houses have.
Which Coronation Street, isn't it?
Which the others didn't.
They got an outside toilet or whatever.
Yeah. By the time we are getting into the start of the 20th century, this is a picture of around that period. You'll notice that they have got outside loos.
Right. Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? It's mad. It's quite subduing as well, because it makes you think, you obviously stuff that you didn't know, and it makes you just, I don't know, it subdues you in a way. It's quite a strange experience to have people tell you about people that made you, really.
Talk about your great-granddad, William Alfred Shoreman. I just want to show you this article. Now, this is one of his sons. This is George. And this was the only article I could find of your Shoreman ancestors getting in a bit of trouble.
Okay.
In 1884, Vinny's great-great-uncle George, a carter from North Kent Street, was fined 5 shillings for working a horse that had a bad back.
All right, so it's cruelty to horses, eh?
That is
sure, that's not my family.
Well, that is the only...
But refused to have any animal cruelty, so just say that, even in the past.
That was the only thing I could find that was slightly negative about the Shoremans in the press. So what I will say was they were a very hard-working family from Manchester who kept themselves, were very much into sport. And I imagine that came from your great-great-granddad, who obviously pushed his sons into sport, and then that filtered down.
Yeah.
And it's been an absolute pleasure, Vinny, looking into your family tree.
Thank you. It's been, sorry if I was a bit, I'm not normally this quiet as a person, but to hear the information, and it changes your whole perspective as to what you believe you was told and what is actual factual. So yeah, thank you for having me. It's freaked me out a bit, but yeah, cheers, I appreciate it.
So that is it for this week. Thank you so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed that. And also a huge thank you to my sponsor, Whitney Antiques. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast. I couldn't do it without you. Thank you. Don't forget, if you want to get in touch with me and send me a message, you can do so via my website, which is www.michaelahume.com. As always, I always sign off by saying have a great week researching, and I shall see you next week. Goodbye.